Yeah, you could just have a seat. Yeah. All right. Cool. You wouldn't happen to know why we're here, do you? What is it, Mr. Jones? Yeah, that's my name. Yeah.
Little does he know that this vile organization, this federal whatever you call it, of control, they took my brother. I'll find out where he really is. You can't hide him from me, you bastards!
Sir? Is everything alright? I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Well, you idiot.
Oh, right. Well, I just, decided to stop on by. I passed by the facility a few times and wanted to see if I could get a tour. Okay.
You guys can't hide him from me!
So what do you know about the organization? There's no way you could have just easily gotten into this high security facility just willy-nilly. Would you believe it if I told you that I got it through because of the janitor? You got in because of a janitor. Wait, that can't be all the story. What aren't you telling me? Just tell him. Are you inner monologuing?
No.
No, I had asked if you... what's your business here? Why are you here today? Absolutely not.
That's all you're gonna tell him.
And that's all I'm gonna tell you. Oh, crap. Welcome back to the show, guys. It is me, Steven, on the shelf, and today we are reviewing Control. Now, Control is the newest game by Remedy Studios. Most of you might remember Remedy from a few years back when they did Quantum Break, and whether you liked the game or you were really iffy about the game, I wanted to sit there and at least start the episode off by just giving a small, brief little history of Remedy. The Finnish development studio was actually founded all the way back in 1995. They're credited with some of the most iconic games that we've actually seen today, with Max Payne 1 and 2, as well as the wonderful Alan Wake that actually came out roughly 10 years ago or so. The point here is that, whether you think Quantum Break was good or it was bad, or, it just was somewhere in the middle, they've obviously been known to do some really great stuff. And with Control, I'm happy to say that they're able to kind of get back to their roots a little bit while being able to continue doing some cool and unique things. So one thing I can always give Remedy, no matter what, whether it fails or it succeeds, is always trying to do new stuff, unique stuff, and always trying to push what they're able to do, as well as telling very unique stories. So first, let's go ahead and talk about the positives of this game. Obviously, the number one thing I think everybody has talked about to this point is the combat. The combat is absolutely amazing. And to be honest with you, I'm glad that they were able to kind of get back to it. I know that with, and not to harp away on that because that's not what this review is to do, but just to kind of compare. Where I know Quantum Break tried to do some new things and to make combat fun and interesting. I feel like this was the vision that they had fully realized. With, cool powers, nothing like super duper unique in the way of powers or guns, but how they're utilized and in combination and succession is really where the uniqueness comes from with this game. And what do I mean by that? Well, you've got about 5 or 6 powers that you can gain throughout the game. From being able to throw objects with your mind, which obviously is super satisfying when you're picking up bricks, or you're, picking up giant boxes and just smashing people's heads in with it. Or, as you continue to level that ability up, you can pick up even heavier things like fork trucks and stuff like that, and being able to just mow down groups of enemies with it. And you also have, in combination with that, other abilities like the ability to go ahead and levitate, or the ability to take control of other people. And so, using, like, for instance, the throw ability to knock some people on the ground, and then if they're weak enough to be able to just sit there and take control of them, is really cool. So then suddenly you have an army of 2 or 3 guys, and you can take over pretty much anybody other than really a boss. And there are some really powerful enemies that you can have on your side, and you can continue to level that ability up to go ahead and increase duration and stuff like that to make it where you can have them for even longer. The skill trees are actually really cool and are really, I don't want to say unique because that's not quite the word, but they're really well fleshed out in the sense that, you can go ahead and use your skill points that you get from completing missions and side quests, and, and obviously increase duration or increase health or increase, energy. And then as you continue leveling down them, they'll also kind of branch off and have other unique things about them, whether it's, like I said, having an extra person you can sit there and take control of, or having the ability to, when an enemy is weak, to pick them up and throw them, whether it's off the edge or add some more guys. And you can have some really cool, combinations with that. And like I said, or if you combine, levitate, and and then you pick up some stuff and smash it down on them, or whatever the case is. There's a lot of great ways to utilize all the abilities because of all the crazy amounts of traversal and the crazy amounts of different like I said, combinations. I don't mean to repeat myself, but combinations you can kind of put in together that makes it work. Combat is an absolute blast. There are a decent amount of enemy variations. There could have been maybe 1 or 2 other ones, honestly, but here I feel like there's a good combination of different, heavy and light enemies that do different various things that require different tactics to take them on. And obviously with all these abilities and with the weapons that you have, which are obviously really cool, and I'll get into that in a second, but when you combine all this stuff together, it also makes it too where sometimes the physics in general are really crazy. I mean, I'll also talk about that in a little bit too, but being able to sit there and just rip apart the world around you and to utilize it to your advantage, whether you're creating a shield to sit there and block enemy fire, or to block oncoming attacks of some sort, and to throw those walls, that shield at the enemy is it's really fun, especially when you beef it up. It gets really cool. And honestly, a lot of this stuff, I mean, the particles and all the other stuff, all the, like I said, all the physics, being able to ragdoll people and whatnot, it's an absolute blast. And to be honest with you, that alone is worth at least checking this game out. And like I said, environments are completely destructible, which adds to the combat for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're obviously able to utilize it because, you start breaking off, let's say, pieces of a concrete pillar as you're shooting, or you're throwing things, and chunks of brick and concrete are flying off. Then you can also pick those up and throw them at enemies as well. Or you can obviously, you don't have, and then obviously the second part of that is the fact that you can actually go ahead and you'll lose cover as enemies are just shredding stuff and destroying things. And if you're not careful, certain abilities, once you start to become so powerful, you evade, and it's almost like you got a little a sonic force around you, where you'll destroy stuff around you by accident. Whether it's railings or whether it's walls that you're trying to hide behind. So you gotta be careful with that too. But honestly, being able to just destroy everything around you, from the desk and having all the papers fly, and destroying like some entire walls, being able to pick up stuff and throw it through things, if somebody's making you mad. All of that is obviously really fun, but one other little note to touch on too is when you're actually using certain abilities, the game is fairly generous with your ability to lock onto certain enemies. So when you're trying to throw things, when you're so far in reach of said enemies, you can sit there and lock onto those enemies and throw them at them without having to try to aim while they're on the run, which is nice. Obviously, the further back you are from your enemy, you might go ahead and not be able to lock onto them, but you can still free throw it and try to hit them. And most of the time, you'll usually nail them. The hardest ones to really hit are the enemies that usually tend to float or hover above you. Those ones tend to be the most annoying, obviously, for the fact that with them flying, they'll go ahead and they'll dodge either way, and there's no way to be able to really grab them and bring them back down, or to be able, so you throw something at them, they get so much space above you to just kind of dodge you. It's annoying, so you have to shoot them, but they'll also dip and dodge, and it's hard to keep focus on them. So they're definitely the most annoying types of enemies. But the other thing that makes them really annoying too is the fact that they throw their own objects at you, using their own psychic powers, that very reminiscent of yours, and throwing pieces of rock and concrete at you as well. Those, I would say, like I said, are the most challenging enemies. But it's a great variation. That's where I was saying earlier, the variation of enemies is really good. It's really solid. You have, like I said, a mixture of light and heavy enemies on the ground, but you'll also have enemies in the sky. You'll have bosses. You'll have a great mixture of enemies that are going to keep you on your toes. And of course, the other thing that I touched on, the guns. It's really a gun. You pick it up early in the game, and and they kind of briefly explain it to you about what the gun basically represents. You control and manipulate the gun to kind of your settings in a way. Like, I guess, and that's something, one of those things, and I'll talk about it when I talk a little more about story and stuff like that, but it's one of the things that really kind of hurt the game more than anything was the lack of explanation on some things. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes having a mystery or this kind of like aura of like the unknown around certain things is great. That's what makes great thrillers. That's what makes great, whether it's a sci-fi or some kind of a mystery movie, whatever. That's what makes them the best, is that you have just enough information that certain questions are answered while holding back just enough to make you kind of, keep sniffing after it, like a dog hooked on a sausage. You want to make sure that you have, just a little bit that makes you, salivate a little bit, and you're like, hey, I really want to find out more. I want to know more. The game does a great job of really hooking you and making you want to know more, but I feel like it withholds some stuff from you that you want to know. And one of the big things is the gun. Like I said, the gun initiates you into being the director of this group, the Federal Bureau of Control, basically kind of like an FBI sort of thing, where they deal with a lot of actually really cool, interesting ideas. Whether it's different dimensions, whether it's like psionic powers. Basically, they're kind of like, it's very reminiscent of like if you'd watch like the X-Files, but instead of it being the FBI, they have their own completely separate department that checks out like weird anomalies. And there are some things that, like I said, that are really explained, well, or at least are told well enough that it leaves you intrigued and wanting to know more information. But with the gun, somehow the gun picks you to be the director, and it, I guess, randomly tests you from time to time. And if you are a good director, you'll die, you'll end up committing suicide or something along the lines of that. Like I said, there's bits and pieces that are explained and you kind of understand, but you like I said, it would have been great to get just a little bit more information, but that's just me.
It's harder to hear you when I'm here. It's like the channel's been changed. The board's in charge here. They're pyramids in the Bureau seal. Are they really the ones pulling the strings? I'm not their director. I'm no one's director.
However, now that I've gone off on that tangent, the gun has, I think, like 5 different modes. And they're basically your usual kind of, I don't want to say generic, but basically your 5 things that you kind of expect. You have your normal pistol, and all of the modes and the different types of guns have unlimited ammo. It's just once you use up all the ammo, you have to wait for the gun to recharge to be able to shoot more. Obviously, that's where you want to make sure you definitely mix up your abilities with your guns to make sure you get the most out of your combat. So anyways, you have your pistol, you have a shotgun, which is, obviously a close range, like, burst, like, it's a shotgun. You have your, like, SMG kind of, like, machine gun thing, and then you have a sniper rifle, and then you have, like, a grenade / it's really more of a rocket launcher, and it holds, like, 3 at a time. And these are good. I mean, it would have been nice to get maybe 1 or 2, like, super unique ones to go with it. I think that really would have sold me on it, and really, I think, would have actually given the game an extra point, to be real with you. is if they would have given us like maybe one like super unique ability, or like one super unique like gun variant that goes, you know, with obviously your gun that you can kind of make, you know, something that just really stands out and goes, wow, okay, no other game's done that. Or even if there was only like one or two games that might have done that, I feel like this game might have done it better. We just didn't quite get that. Now, don't get me wrong, I could always see there being a Control 2 or even an expansion of some sort later on down the line, and maybe we'll talk about that later in the review. But you know, I can sit there and see them wanting to do maybe a sequel or to explore the universe again. And to be honest with you, I wish they would. We'll see, though. You know, it's obviously up to the dev team to see if they actually want to make a second one. So, with all the abilities, actually makes it where exploration is an absolute treat in this game. Exploration is actually probably one of the best aspects of this game this year, next to like Metro Exodus. Metro Exodus had like this really rich world with each, you know, the 4 different seasons and the different, you know, areas that you could explore, these semi-open world areas that you could explore. They just felt deep and inviting because there was just stuff around every corner, and this game is no different. Now, there are mods and there is a crafting system that can make it where you can sit there and get mods that will, you know, increase your powers and your abilities. And you have other mods that you can put on like your guns and stuff that will go ahead and make it where they will use less ammo per shot, so you can get more shots off, or you can do more damage, or you'll do more headshot damage, or they'll be tied specifically to certain variants of guns, so that way, you know, and I can't remember all the names off the top of my head, but like for the shotgun, it might make it where it'll reduce bullet spread. Or it'll do, you know what I'm saying, like it'll, and they've got 5 tiers that I found. I didn't find anything higher than 5 tiers. You know, you have your common, your uncommon, your rare, and then I think it was, I can't remember what the 4th one was, but the 5th one was prime. And, you know, so you have your 5 different mods, and by the time you get to like that 4 and 5 level mods, you're going to be dealing some serious damage to enemies. I mean, even some later game enemies. You'll be just shredding them. And it feels good. I mean, to me, that's kind of the power of fantasy. I know that some people, you know, don't like that. They like having, you know, a certain level of difficulty throughout the game. But I guess for me, you know, I'm that meme where they sit there and say, you know, you see a boss and you go and you level up to like level 80 so you can just kick, you know, that level 12 boss's teeth in. And be like, yeah, who's your daddy now, kind of a thing. And that's kind of how I am. I like to sit there and explore, especially when the game and the world that I'm in is very interesting. So for me, being able to destroy shit really easy, yeah, I worked for it. That's kind of the idea. I don't want it to be super hard throughout. It's going to be hard for a little while. I'm going to become a beast, and I want to shred through things. And I feel like, to me, I felt like that was good. It was a good balance if you did side missions with the main missions. You didn't have to do the side missions. You could just stick strictly to the main missions. Focusing back up, exploration is a treat because once you start learning, you know, obviously more abilities and you start doing certain quests to unlock these abilities, you can go back through previously explored areas and you'll find stuff up in the rafters, you'll find things like above certain areas that you can get to that you can now get to with like levitate. And, you know, or a combination of abilities like levitate and dash to be able to, you know, to get to certain areas. You do get to sit there and clamber, which is nice. Trust me, it's nice. Because there are going to be some times where you're going to be just a little short on certain things, and if you didn't have clamber, that'd be really annoying, especially since my biggest issue, and it is a little bit of a negative, but to be real with you, I didn't knock any points off for it, but I always found myself falling off the sides of things. And, you know, it wasn't so much I got knocked off things, it wasn't so much that, you know, it was just me being an idiot and not knowing my surroundings, which is on me, I suppose. For, you know, like I mentioned earlier, you might knock out, like, a rail or something like that when you're dodging around and trying to avoid certain enemies' weapons, as well as them using, you know, throwing things, whatever the case is. And not paying attention, there's so many open areas where you just fall into a pit and die. However, the checkpoint system is really forgivable. So if you're an idiot like myself, you should be alright. They're not going to completely reset you, which is nice. I feel like that was the compromise for, you know, like I said, idiots like me. But once you start exploring those areas, you're going to find those really nice mods I was mentioning earlier. You know, you might find other things as well. And it's the exploration leads to some great moments. It leads to great, side quests. It leads to great organic moments.
I hope those nasty hiss haven't been bothering you too much.
Like little things that you would never have found had you not, like I said, gone back through the area with these new abilities. Hell, there was one secret area I found that had a couple chests in there with mods in them that I blew out the wall. I wasn't even trying to. I was just goofing around, throwing things. I can't remember what I was doing. Throwing things, and I accidentally threw a desk through the wall, and I was like, whoa! And then all of a sudden I saw the box, and I was like, oh, wait a second. There's some goodies in there. And I went in there and I started looking around, and it was like a little cubby hole that was just plastered over. And there's a lot of that kind of thing, those things all over the place. So it's always beneficial to go back through like I said, any area that's been explored before and to double check and see, make sure you didn't miss anything. And honestly, stuff like this, it feels rewarding. And like I mentioned earlier with like Metro Exodus, these are like really positive things, because I want to go explore the world, not just for the goodies, but for the lore as well. There are all kinds of recordings. I honestly don't really even remember how many there were, because I don't remember seeing a complete total amount. But I know there's an achievement to get 120, and I went well above that. So, I mean, there's got to be like 150, 180 different collectibles, from like tape recordings to newspaper clippings to like psychiatric reports to like little television series. And I mean, I know they've always been kind of that group that's always done silly shit like that, which I totally dig. There's like little TV series. There's even this one really great. There's like a great it's like a program almost. It's like training tapes in a way, where like the head doctor, Dr. Darling, who's actually played by in real life person, but they post it like it's a movie, and like it's a like I said, it's a training video. And he does a great job. The person who plays the Dr. Darling does such a great job, and obviously really had a great time doing the role. And I thought he did a great job. A great job. I know I'm repeating myself on that, but he did. He did. He had a lot of fun. A lot of the stuff that he said was really interesting. So you always wanted to find more training tapes, because he's explaining in a way without spouting like minutes and minutes and minutes of exposition. It's like a minute long, like little clips that kind of give you little nuggets to be like, oh, okay. And when he's explaining different dimensions, or he's explaining certain, he's explaining what they call objects of power, or as he says, oops, that have like things that create certain anomalies in the world. And there's other tiers of like objects that are powerful, but they're not objects of power.
No justice. Now, the white non-space, the ever-present inverted black pyramid, the board, all linked, intrinsically tied to the oldest house, tied to the director, the process of choosing a director, tied to all objects of power in terms of who controls them. Yes.
And it's great, and especially it's disturbing as time goes on and you see this character start to kind of lose himself, because he realizes after all these years of them finding these different objects and finding these different things that there are darker sides and darker powers behind all of this. And it's really great to sit there and see, him becoming more disheveled and more, his hair's a mess, he's not wearing his lab coat, his clothes are a wreck. He just looks like he's losing his mind. He's just rambling on about things. Like, what is he talking about? And it's great moments like that keep you wanting to go look for more things in the world, to piece it all together like a giant puzzle. Which then I guess really, I would sit there and say the last really great positive thing that I could touch on is, adding into, obviously, trying to look into the lore and the reason why you're looking into those things is because of the great world that's crafted. You're in one building, but the building is so massive. And it's crazy because if I remember straight, It's supposed to be located in New York City, but there's like so much underground stuff. It reminds you, honestly, kind of like Umbrella Corporation in Raccoon City. That's kind of like, if you want to get kind of a gist of things, where they have basically almost like an underground city doing things, whether it's mining certain things, rare materials or whatever, or just having a million freaking offices. The world is really cool, and the building, even though it is a giant concrete building, you think you'd get bored with it, you don't. The ambiance, level of detail in certain things is so unprecedented and is done so well that, you know, it just, certain areas also just feel so unique, feel really cool when you go ahead and you go through them, and there's like, you know, whether it's like these mold spores that are growing in some areas, or there's like certain sections of the building, like there's a particular side quest that's really, really cool, really, it was a blast to be able to explore, but it was kind of hidden in an area that you wouldn't find until you got toward the end of the game, or I think you couldn't get to it till you beat the game. You know, it's this quest with this mirror where everything's in reverse, and you have to fight like a darker version of yourself. It was so cool, and it was so unique, and it's stuff like that, like unique experiences like that happen throughout the world, and they feel natural and they feel great, that combine all those things together, from the different enemies to, you know, the different locations within this just one location, as well as obviously all the hidden little secrets throughout the whole place. There are just a few negatives that hold the game back from absolute greatness from myself. Now, while I did touch on the fact that there's enough stuff here that makes you want to go ahead and explore and to learn more things, I also touched on the fact that sometimes it just felt like it didn't answer enough questions by the end of the game. It doesn't have to answer every single question. I get that. You know, that's where you do kind of leave yourself open for just an open interpretation or for a potential sequel. So I get that. But there are just some things that just kind of left you scratching your head a little bit, and the ending is definitely one of them. It was one of those things where it was building up, and things were, you know, were becoming more and more interesting, and then suddenly it just ends. It's really abrupt, and it doesn't really explain. I don't want to spoil anything, but I'll try to give a smallish idea and smallish hint of what I'm trying to touch on. So, the main character is looking for her brother, and her brother was picked up by the agency at one point when they were younger, and so she's trying to sit there. She feels like she was beckoned to this place. She finally finds this place. She's been looking for years for this place. She finally gets there. It's under quarantine from the main enemy, the Hiss. All that's fine and dandy, but as she continues to learn more things about this organization and about some of the obscure knowledge they have about her, the fact that she, and while I understand in some way you can't prevent it, you can't stop it because, you know, the gun and the quote-unquote the board and wind up picking their director, at the same time it's so interesting that she's just kind of like, She doesn't question it. She doesn't have any kind of like, you know, conflict of consciousness. She doesn't have any of that. She just kind of goes with it. And it just feels wonky, feels weird in a way. And not all the characters feel like that. You know, while the main character, in some ways, she is a great protagonist, and she is a cool protagonist. In other ways, she's a weak protagonist. And it's just because of the level of depth they decided to give her. And, you know, when compared to something like Dr. Darling, or, you know, one or two of the other characters, like the janitor, Ahidi, you know, it just, she seems a bit weaker, and she shouldn't seem that way. You know, you want strong side characters, you want other characters that you kind of latch onto and be like, oh, this person's interesting. You do want that, but you want a main character that you can really fall in line behind. And with her, you know, with main character here, you really just, you don't fully. You know, she's not Aloy. She's not, you know, Kate from Gears of War. She's not, you know, immense amount of different female protagonists you can think of. Samus. You think of Lara Croft. You know, she's not any of those where they have, you know, all kinds of different conflicts within themselves that give them depth as characters. She just doesn't have that, but she could have that if they do decide to do a sequel or an expansion or whatever. And I'd be interested to see that. But the story is very much feast or famine sometimes with it. You know, you've got a lead character who will sit there and like monologue in her head, and sometimes she'll just repeat what she's thinking, and other times she won't, but she'll leave you with just a smallest of nuggets, and you're like, what is she talking about? And sometimes it's answered eventually, and sometimes it's not. And then your feast is where she just starts spouting off exposition, and I feel like I'm watching the Star Wars prequels. You know, like, there should be a balance between being able to visually storytell something and to sit there and just talk for 5 minutes about, oh, I'm here because of this, and that. You guys did this, and that. I'm here because this, and that. Oh, I also have this, and that. You know, it's just, what? And it's just, it is that way, and I don't know. It just feels like some pieces of the script, some of them feel really good and genuine, and other bits and pieces of it feel stiff, you know, or choppy in a way. And sometimes the conversations just, they don't feel natural. So, and like I said, it stands out when you compare it to like Dr. Darling or, you know, some of the other characters, like Heidi. You know, Heidi sometimes doesn't make sense. It's just gibberish, but he's such an intriguing character, and when you start to decipher the things that he says, he's a really interesting character. So honestly, like I said, I would just go moving forward. I just like to see more depth with her. I do want that, and I do want a second game with her. My other big issue is the fact that bosses here, it's interesting because Remedy shows that they can do boss battles, but it's so weird because some of the boss battles in the main story are good, and some of them are really bad, and I don't know why. Like, the bosses just, they're not really boss-type enemies, and it's weird because certain side quests have amazing bosses and have amazing characters in those storylines and stuff like that that you get to, you know, interact with or you get to fight against. And so it just feels like they kind of missed the mark on that one a little bit. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't want stale or boring bosses in my side quest either, because I mean, it makes it where you don't want a complete side quest. You don't want to explore more. You don't want to do more. However, it should be pretty close to the same quality for both main missions and side missions. Not just side missions, especially since sometimes side missions can be missed by people who are trying to run through the game, or who might be, only have a limited amount of time to play it and just totally whiff and miss it while they're trying to get to the end because, they want to get to the next game. So, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I want anybody to ever have to run through the game, but just knowing that sometimes some of those things are going to be missed. I like having that, like, anywhere you look, any corner that you go around, there's going to be something great, something cool, something interesting there waiting for you. It feels very much, like I said before, Metro Exodus, but obviously the prime candidate that does that the best, that's always done it the best, other than maybe, obviously, Metro Exodus now finally was able to, might have finally taken that crown this year, was Skyrim. Or even The Witcher 3 did it really well too, where there's just little nuggets all over the place that you're going to find, no matter what corner you go around, no matter whatever rock you flip over, you're going to find something that you're going to be like, ooh, that's either going to help me, or that's really interesting, or I want to explore more, and it just kind of ties into that loop of wanting to do things. And with some of the bosses being stale in the main quest, sometimes people are like, I'm not going to really try to focus on the side quest, even though some of the most interesting characters are in the side quest, even though some of the best bosses are in the side quests. So if you go ahead and get an opportunity, to play this game after this review, definitely check out every nook and cranny for those side quests, because they're, like I said, there's some of the best moments in the game, from the combat standpoint, from the story standpoint, from the character standpoint, are in the side quests. Don't miss those. As I touched on before too, another really kind of like weak point is the ending. The ending was kind of like I said, it just left way too many questions on the table, and not a lot of things answered. And then also too, the middle of the game kind of drags on a little bit. It felt like padding in a way, because there's a lot of fetch quests. You get introduced to, one or two characters that wind up just going away. I mean, they even literally say, I have something to go do, I'll be back, you should hold down the fort. And they leave. Never to be seen again. And it was weird. And like I said, there was just a handful of, fetch quests, because, most of the structure for, the quests are pretty good in the beginning and the end, obviously, until you get to the very, very end, the last, 10 minutes of the game. Most of it was really good. That's why it stands out, because, the middle just, Like it felt like more like padding than it did an actual fleshed out story. You know, you don't have to drag out the story 12 to 15 hours. I know people will complain no matter what. But, you know, as long as it's longer than like 6 or 7 hours, you know, you give it a decent length, but you don't have to pad it, you know, to 13, 14, 15 hours. Some people will just give up on it just because they might not be as engrossed like I was. You know, or they might not find the side stuff that's really great like I did. And they'll just give up on the game even though they're missing out on some great things. So it's just something to keep in mind going forward that, you know, I wish all games, not just this game, I wish a lot more games would just get rid of the fetch quests. Because nothing is more annoying than being like, you know, Assassin's Creed did that the worst. That's why I hated Assassin's Creed Odyssey so damn much. Because literally you're like, I am a god. I am a Spartan god. And, you know, a Greek god, whatever you want to call it. And here I am picking up sticks in the woods for somebody. What the hell is this? So, that's just that. You know, you're the director of this facility, but you're doing fetch quests. What the hell? So that's it for me, guys. I think I'll go ahead and wrap that up. My final grade for Control is actually an 8 out of 10. I was thinking about giving it a 7 out of 10, but I think it's a little bit better than that. I think the game is really good. A lot of the foundation is there going forward. I feel like this is the game that really got Remedy back on track. I mean, like I said, I'm not here to harp on Quantum Break, but I know that Quantum Break, you know, didn't really satisfy with a lot of people. And so because of that, I feel like this is like I said, a lot of the ideas, you know, fully realized that they wanted in Quantum Break that they're doing here. And like I said, this game is really good. It's got a very interesting story, unique story. I like the play on like the different dimensions aspect, and you know, and I do want more. You know, even with some of the complaints that I had, I do want more. And you know, so for me, that means that the game's pretty damn good. It's not great and it's not memorable like a 9 or a 10 out of 10, but it's still a really good game. And to be honest with you, considering the fact that Remedy is really an independent studio, you should go out and support them. Go pick this game up. If you've got an extra $60, I'm telling you, you'll get your money's worth with the amount of content in this game. You'll probably get about, I think I got like 20 hours or so into the game. It was about 15 to 20 hours, somewhere around there. And got a majority of the stuff, but there were still a few things that I didn't get to finish up before I wound up returning the game. But it's definitely worth your $60. And if you wanted to wait till a sale, I mean, I understand. Just make sure that, like I said, go support these guys. This is a really good game. It's a really unique game, and actually, especially since it came out a little bit before all the big rush of big name games, AAA games, I think it found a nice little sweet spot to be able to get noticed and to hopefully get picked up by some people. And I hope it does. I hope it does well. I hope they sell this game well, and they can continue giving us more great games. Remedy is a great studio overall. You know, despite what I might think about one or two games, you know, no matter how much I might praise some of their older stuff, you know, they're still a great studio. They're still out there trying to do unique things and cool things and interesting things to them. And there are some other studios that do it, but there's just not nearly as many nowadays. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope, you know, Remedy, if you ever do watch this, I hope you know, utilize the feedback as best as you can. I did, you know, like I said, I love the game. It was really great, and I hope to sit there and see more from you guys. So, but that'll be it for me, guys. I should be putting out the Blair Witch game here, hopefully in the next day or two. I already finished it, ready to talk about it. And then I've got Gears of War 5. I can't believe we already got Gears of War 5. We're here, baby. It's fall, baby. I'm back. I'm gonna be putting out all kinds of videos, so prepare for that. But until then, I'll talk to you guys later on the next On the Shelf. Bye, guys.